as we are joined by David Alter from the LeafsNation.com. David, live at the rink right now. So we got some great sounds, and this is going to be an intense first-round matchup between the Leafs and Lightning. David, I'll start with this first question. Is it fair to say that no one is facing more pressure than the Toronto Maple Leafs to come out of the first round?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Look, they haven't advanced past the first round. By they, I mean the Toronto Maple Leafs since 2004. And every year it seems like they're inching closer and closer to do it. The expectation increases with each year. And for one reason or another, something happens and they don't get the job done. And so now they go up against the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions in the Tampa Bay Lightning. And it looks like it's a challenge that they're embracing. They didn't do anything to avoid this opponent. They had a 115-point season, a franchise record. They look like they're firing on all cylinders. There are a couple of question marks that I'm sure we'll get to, but they look ready to go, and it's just a matter of if they can actually finally get through that hump that is that first round exit that they seem to have with each and every year.
David, when you look at the Leafs and Lightning on paper, the Leafs are one team that can score with the best of the teams in the East. I think maybe there's a slight mismatch defensively when you have a Norris Trophy candidate in Victor Hedman on the blue line, but what really stands out on paper is the matchup in net. Jack Campbell against Andrei Vasilevskiy. How do you feel about Campbell's game? You take a look at the games played in the month of April since he came back from that injury, 7-0-2 with a .915 save percentage, much better, but is it enough to give you confidence heading into round one?
Yeah, you know what? It's tough. It's all going to depend on how he comes out. And you know what? He might actually have a good game or two and look like he's past it. What I'm really curious to see is what happens if he is a reason for a goal against and how he responds. It tends to be these swings where if one bad break goes against him, then it escalates. And then you're kind of wondering, well, okay, now is this the bad Jack Campbell that we saw in the later part of December and January and February and a little bit of March as well? So that's what I'm most curious about. Andrei Vasilevskiy, he hasn't had the year that he's had maybe in years past, but he's still Andrei Vasilevskiy, and he's still like a big part of what Tampa's accomplished. So Jack Campbell, he had a great last year, good playoffs in his first experience against Montreal last year. It wasn't the reason that Toronto didn't get past that, but the drops that he's had in his play are still a bit of a concern to me, and I'm curious to see how he responds after maybe the first mistake he makes, if he's able to brush that off and do what good goaltenders just have, a short memory.
David, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the blue line here, because I look at this Lightning top six, and it's dangerous, and specifically the top line. Like Steven Stamkos and Nikita Kucherov were on fire to end the season here. When you look at this Leafs blue line, who's going to be tasked to maybe shut down that high-end duo on Tampa, and are they up to that kind of challenge?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because the Leafs have been rolling two top pairs just because they have Ilya Lyubushkin and Riley, and Lyubushkin doesn't really have the reps as a first pair shutdown guy. TJ Brody, who's been their main shutdown guy, is going with Jake Muzzin, who, when Jake Muzzin's healthy, has been the go-to guy for that assignment, but he's had dips in his play, and this is a real big evaluation game for him. So it could be quite split up. It's funny, like when you look at Morgan Riley, he seems to be the first pair guy always who's going to get those difficult assignments, but then when they roll out rushes, they've been having TJ Brody and whoever his defensive pair, in this case Jake Muzzin, as the main guy for it. So I think they're going to have to try and figure that out as the game goes along. I would see a split there, and if Jake Muzzin can be that shutdown guy he's been, then I think that pair probably gets a little bit more of the reps just because of the inexperience with someone like Ilya Lyubushkin, who really is a newcomer to this league and a newcomer to this team.
David, can you give us a quick update from the morning skate today on the health of the Leafs? It sounds like Andre Kasha in, Michael Bunting out, but how far away is Bunting from being an impact on the series?
Yeah, Bunting is, looks like he's close. They've said he's been close, and I know they were optimistic a week ago or so when the injury happened that he would be ready, but I guess they're being really cautious, and having someone like Andre Kasha back who will play tonight, I think kind of helps mitigate that. There's concerns about what the first line would look like with Matthews and Marner when you put someone like Alex Kerfoot up, because Sheldon Keefe doesn't like how it affects the mid pairs. But getting Andre Kasha back gives him that luxury. They said he'll be back at Bunting will be back at some point in the series. They just don't know when, but he's skating. He looks good out there. I think they're just being super cautious to make sure he doesn't have a setback and he gets in a bit too early than they would like, and then risk the fact that they wouldn't have him for the remainder of the series if something worse happened.
All right, David, let's wrap this up. Give us your pick. How do you see this series playing out, and in how many games? Who's coming out on top?
I think the Leafs are going to take this one in 6. I actually debated this one for a long time. I really like the way the Leafs have played in the last couple months of the season when they didn't have the threat of trade deadline or what the team was going to look like. Tampa's had their peaks and valleys. They've looked good in the last little bit, and they've had someone like Stamkos who's putting up the points. But they've had their stretches where they haven't looked as sharp as the past, and it's going to be hard for them to replicate the success of the past years. You don't see three-peats too often. I think this is where it kind of ends, and I think Toronto does squeak this out in 6 or 7, but I think they could actually do it in 6.
David Alter from the Leafs Nation going to be covering this series like a blanket. Appreciate your time, David. Get back to covering that practice now.